It's the charity fundraiser that raised thousands of dollars for a women's shelter. Only problem, more than a year and a half on, the money still hasn't been seen.
Nobody would argue how important a fundraising event like this is.
$1,000 bid. $1,000.
A Casino Royale theme. A community coming together to raise money for homeless women and their children.
On average, more than 56,000 women per night across Australia are homeless or sleeping rough, and there's a massive need for it. And with 1 in 2 women getting turned away from emergency accommodation, it's incredibly important and timely.
The problem is that event was more than 18 months ago, and the $25,000 raised on the night still hasn't been given to the Camden Women's Shelter. Scott Taylor is the chair of the charity organisation.
This is rightfully and justifiably funds that were raised for Camden Women's Shelter. The organisations and the people involved for this openly raised it for Camden Women's Shelter.
The Wattle Grove Lions Club hosted the event after the local council donated a vacant property to community women's shelters to establish a refuge in Camden. Masterton Homes agreed to knock down the existing cottage and build a new facility for free. The money raised on the night would be used to run it.
So they made a flyer that said 100% of the money goes to the Camden Women's Shelter.
Plus there was an article in a Liverpool magazine as well, and a newspaper article, and their own Facebook posts.
The casino night wasn't the only event held by the Wattle Grove Lions Club to raise money for the running of a new shelter.
Yeah, so there was a couple of events that had occurred. First for the Camden Shelter, there was a high tea and there was a fashion show, and then the big event was the Casino Royale event that occurred in at Liverpool. Approximately $39,000 has been raised between the 3 events.
Just how far would that money go?
In essence, those funds that are sitting there on the bank statement would be helping 5 women and their children to have 3 months accommodation. Specifically for individual sectors.
Scott says when COVID hit last year, the Masterton plan started to go pear-shaped.
We were advised that they did not have any clear indication or guideline as to when they'd be in a position to be able to commence the build.
When you would ask the Lions Club for the funds, what would their response be?
Just a bit of a delay because of COVID and a different environment, which were obviously all understandable for with this,
The deal with Masterton fell through, so the Lions Club decided it would no longer provide the funds raised to the Camden Women's Shelter.
And so it's been, over 19 months now, 20 months that we've been chasing up this actively.
In the meantime, Scott and his team turned to local businesses for donations and successfully negotiated with council to renovate rather than rebuild the earmarked site.
They've allowed us to renovate, so we're renovating a 3-bedroom cottage there, and we're building a separate 2-bedroom dwelling there as well. So we're going to have the opportunity to help 5 women and children be in safe accommodation.
At the end of the day, it's about women and children and potentially saving somebody's life.
Tanya Whitehouse is a domestic violence advocate and is also involved in setting up the Camden Women's Shelter.
I've worked in this sector for 28 years. I know how hard it is to get things done. I know how hard it is to get funding. And we're all supposed to be on the same page here. So if we're all on the same page, why is this so difficult?
The Wattle Grove Lions Club refused multiple requests for an interview. Instead, it issued this statement conceding it would finally pay the $25,000 raised on the casino night.
The club accepts that the presence of Camden Women's Shelter branding may have given the impression that the funds were being raised for the running costs of the shelter.
But the club is adamant the proceeds of the high tea and fashion show were only for a Masterton-built shelter. And given that's not going ahead in Camden, they refuse to cough up the cash. However, also in the statement, the club promises to donate the remaining money to the Camden Women's Shelter only if it fails to build a Masterton project elsewhere by 2023.
Please release the funds that are rightfully that have been raised for the Camden Women's Shelter. We'd just like to close this out and continue to focus on what's important to us, getting the shelter open and up and running.
15 complaints have been lodged with Fair Trading, which is investigating. We'll let you know the outcome as it happens.